Hey everyone, good to see you. Justin Jolene here, and I wanted to show you this really cool guide on why runners get hurt and how to fix it. Better understanding why runners get hurt in the first place helps us not only take runners from the end of rehabilitation to being able to get to 30 minutes of running and beyond, even running a marathon, but it also helps us understand some of the things we need to safeguard against or the parameters we need to put in place to help runners be able to not get injured in the first place or recover from their injuries better. So I want to go through the top 5 reasons of why runners get hurt and give you some clinical pearls of things you can do to avoid that or to help them recover from some of those injuries. So let's go through these risk factors and key points here in this guide. The first one I want to talk about is the individual risk factors. And you can see here that I have a couple highlighted items here, both external risk factors, internal risk factors, and non-training factors. Because truly what is happening when someone gets hurt is injuries are occurring because an anatomical structure is being stressed beyond the load capacity it has. So we have, for example, an Achilles tendon that is being loaded too much by maybe the accumulative stress of a run, and that Achilles tendon, after a while, will say, I just can't take that force anymore. I can't take that pressure anymore. I can't take that load anymore. But load can come from several different forms. So I want to talk about these risk factors because they help us understand why structures would get loaded beyond their capacity. We have external, internal, and non-training factors, as I mentioned before, and let's first start with the external. So this would be things like a high running distance or high running mileage, or even duration. And it would also be running frequency, so running in short succession or running in multiple consecutive days, running for long distances, and then also high intensity. The internal factors would be things like your running biomechanics. Maybe you're a heel striker, maybe you're a forefoot striker, maybe you have excessive lateral contact with your foot when you're landing at initial contact, and that's causing a change to your biomechanics. And one thing we always see in the research is that reduced muscle strength has a direct correlation to a higher risk to injury. But there's things outside of training that are also going to be very important when it comes to predicting an injury. And these are some very, very important things, for example, running experience. Because novice runners are more likely to become injured, since we know that. So for you, if you have a novice runner that is starting to run, or maybe running after an injury, be mindful of how much you're giving them to do and how much mileage and intensity and frequency you're adding on all at once. Additionally, runners with a previous injury are 2 times more likely to sustain a running-related injury. So that's another good thing for us to keep in mind, as we see a lot of runners who are recovering from injury know that they are at high risk for future injuries. And then on the other side, we see that sex and age actually don't show strong correlations to running injuries, which is good. And that can help us predict and say, okay, well, we're not going to put your age into a factor here. We aren't going to put your sex or gender into a factor. However, you might take that predisposition or that previous injury. Okay, we see that you had a Achilles rupture or a series of plantar fasciitis or plantar femoral pain syndrome, and we want to make sure we're putting safeguards and strength and things like that in place so that you're not injuring that again. Our clinical pearls, you can see down here, the decisions should be made on intensity, distance, and frequency based on biomechanics, muscle strength, and experience, as we mentioned before, and be careful progressing those novice runners. Let's go on to our next subject here, which is going to be the training and running volume. So again, another risk factor to injury, another reason why runners get hurt. And training distance does have a strong correlation to running injuries. However, it may not be what you think. You might just think to yourself that the more someone runs, that's going to equal them having a higher risk to getting injured. Well, actually, we see that low weekly training distance and frequency shows significant risk to running injury. So under 2 hours and under 2 sessions. And that's the highest risk to injury. However, we do see an emerging threshold of 40 miles, and over that 40 miles per week mark, we do notice that we have increased running injuries and running related injuries. So again, keep those parameters in mind. What we can take away from that is that running experience and fitness level can certainly be a factor when it comes to running injuries. Someone that's running less than 2 hours or less than 2 sessions is most likely a little less fit or a little less experienced than some of those folks maybe running 10 hours or maybe 5 hours per week. That all being said, we do want to be very, very careful with how much we're adding and how much mileage we're giving someone, especially if they're a novice runner. The other thing we want to be mindful of is if we're giving them a sudden increase in running volume and intensity. And most PTs and healthcare professionals, along with running experts, are very good at this, and they caution their patients, but we want to be very, very careful with prescribing running volume and frequency because that can directly link to running related injuries. Now, some of the common running related injuries I have listed here for you are patellofemoral pain syndrome, Achilles tendon injuries, medial tibial stress syndromes, or potentially stress fractures, and plantar fasciitis. Let's continue and talk about running gait patterns and how that relates to injury and risk for injury. And again, a couple key points you can see here is that running gait patterns do have a correlation. However, not all running gait patterns do have a correlation to injury. It's also important to note here that we may not have all the evidence on certain running gait patterns that would link them to an injury or not. But the ones that we do see is a contralateral pelvic drop. So we see pelvic drop being a big contributor. In fact, over the norms, we see that even 1 degree, 2 degrees of pelvic drop can have a significant increase in risk of getting a running related injury. Also, forward trunk lean, especially at mid stance, and a combination of knee extension and ankle dorsiflexion. One thing that is important to note is that rear foot strike is a higher risk to injury than midfoot and forefoot strike. However, changing from a rear foot strike to a midfoot strike isn't necessarily indicated, and we don't see a reduction of the risk of injury or that it even improves running economy. So be careful, especially if you have a runner that comes in telling you, oh, I rear foot strike, I need to go to a midfoot or forefoot. That might not be actually beneficial for them to do. Be judicious and careful with who you recommend to do that. That can be a big change on the biomechanics and the running patterns that they're presenting with. I want to hammer home this point here with knee extension and ankle dorsiflexion. So I want to actually move and show you this video here of a runner. And while we'll let this video play a little bit, I want you to see that knee extension, dorsiflexion, and while I don't have any software, I just have some markers here and I just want to show this in real time. What I do want to show is that we especially see some forward trunk lean at mid stance. We see excessive knee extension or relatively extended knees, and we're also going to see a significant amount of dorsiflexion at initial contact. That puts a lot of ground reaction forces through the lower extremities, and we can certainly see a higher risk for injury, just so you can see what that would look like on a running gait or someone's running pattern. Let's talk about strength training. Strength training can be another example of a risk factor to injury. And it's been known for a long time that strength training equals decrease in risk to injury. In fact, the clinical pearl here would be that resistance training should be used by runners 2 to 3 days per week for at least 10 weeks. And that's shown to improve running economy and reduce risk to injury. Now, what strength training you do has some new research that's come out. And what we see is that both heavy resistance training and plyometrics decrease risk to running-related injuries. However, heavy resistance training with nearly maximal load improves running economy, and it helps the most when it comes to decreasing injuries. Again, 10 weeks really to show a difference here. So keep that in mind, especially as you're having runners prep for return to run programs or potentially prepping for something like a marathon, half marathon, or a race they have coming up as well. The last aspect of a risk factor to injury or a reason why runners get hurt is some of the psychosocial elements. And what I want to point out here is that the psychosocial elements of running are very complex. But it's important to understand that they do play into not only runners getting injured, but also preventing and resolving running-related injuries. So I want to start with something that a lot of you have maybe encountered before. A patient's come in, they got hurt, and now they're getting back to running. But we see that there's a fear and avoidance of running, especially after injury. People don't want to get injured again. And so their body or their mind tells them, hey, I am going to take out the thing that hurt me. I'm going to get rid of running. However, you might see that they are not a risk to injury and that they are ready to run. And that may be something that you can provide a little bit of patient education or runner education on. We also see a higher amount of athletic fear and avoidance, especially with runners that are perceiving themselves at a lower ability level to run. So what does this really mean? What this means is that if someone has a fear to run again or avoidance of running because of an injury, they also will perceive that they can't run as well. So this might be something where you can educate them and say, look, you're able to run X distance or X time or X amount without pain. Here's what you can do next, and encourage them on their steps to recovery and to progress their return to run program. And lastly, self-regulation. Oh, self-regulation. This can be something very, very hard for runners, and I will identify with this myself. Self-regulation can be very difficult. It can be a runner saying, hey, I am not going to go run today, or it could be a runner saying, yeah, I can run today because I am not in pain or I'm not having a problem. This is a very tricky subject, but teaching runners to identify when they're tired or when they potentially don't need to run, and also educating them that running to the point of injury can cause them to take more time off, can be a significant risk factor to injury. Because if runners are pushing themselves, they can get running-related injuries and certainly be over-fatigued. And there's a lot of studies that show when you are running in a fatigued state that you are at higher risk to injury. And while all these psychosocial elements are certainly some emerging research, and we think that research is certainly pointing and helping runners to avoid injury, mental health has really been overlooked when it's come to running and running-related issues. And so helping have those conversations with runners is really important. It can be something that helps them to avoid getting hurt, and it can be something that really helps them run conscientiously and safely. Lastly, I'll just go through the references here that you can see, and you can certainly see all of these references if you reach out, or if you're on our email subscription, you will have a copy of this, a guide on how and why runners get hurt and what to do about it and how to fix it. And lastly, if you do want to learn more about this, go ahead and check out the continuing education course or the running clinical specialist certification course, which has more information on why runners get hurt, how they get hurt, how to fix it, and help you become a running expert. In the meantime, we'll talk to you soon. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time.